My name is Stanley Nelson. I'm the director of the Black Panthers Vanguard of the Revolution. Well, the Black Panthers Vanguard of the Revolution is the story of the rise and fall of the Black Panther Party. The Black Panthers started in 1966. Huey Newton and Bobby Seale, two young African Americans who were living in Oakland, started the Black Panthers. And they started as a result of the police brutality that existed. The police in Oakland were famously brutal. But there was a quirk in the law in California that said you could carry a gun, a loaded gun, as long as you carried it out in the open. So the Panthers started, it was a group of about 6 guys, and what they would do was police the police. So they would drive around and follow the police, and when the police jumped out to make a stop, the Panthers would jump out behind them with their loaded guns drawn. They said that what they were trying to do was to make sure that no brutality occurred on the part of the police. I should say that most of the Panther officers did not have guns out in the open because it wasn't legal in most places. But it kind of swept across the country and became a movement, and they became very famous for that look that they had of the black leather jackets, the berets, sunglasses, big afros. And it became a real phenomenon, not only in the United States, but kind of all over the world. There's a perception that the Black Panthers were this male-dominated party with mostly men. One thing that we found in making the film was that the Panthers, by the early 70s, were a party that was majority women. Even though the image that we see and the image that kind of caught on was mostly this kind of very militant black male, the party was made up by militant black females also.
Everybody knows that all the people don't have liberties, all the people don't have freedom, all the people don't have justice, and all the people don't have power, so that means none of us do.
The Black Panther Party certainly had a chauvinist tone, and so we tried to change some of the clear gender roles so that women had guns and men cooked breakfast for children. Did we overcome it? Of course we didn't. As I like to say, we didn't get these brothers from revolutionary heaven.
But it quickly expanded, and they had a 10-point program that included things like more employment for African Americans, better schools, better housing, those kind of things.
Come to the clinic tomorrow for an appointment.
The Black Panther Party was started by Huey Newton and Bobby Seale, who were students at Merritt College in Oakland. Bobby Seale was kind of, this entertainer. He's very entertaining, a great talker, a great speaker. Huey Newton was, as somebody says in the film, the visionary of the party. It was his vision to start this Black Panther Party. They're soon joined by Eldridge Cleaver, who was at that point a little older than them. Eldridge Cleaver had spent about half his life in prison. I think he was like 32 years old or something. He had just written a book called Soul on Ice, which was a series of essays that he wrote while he was in prison. And the film and the book was actually, at that time, as he joins the Panther Party, it's on the New York Times bestseller list. If I had to meet, one person in the Black Panther Party who's passed away, it would be Huey Newton. He goes to prison early on in the party. He's in this incident where a cop is killed, and he's in jail for a number of years. And this movement, the Free Huey movement, starts all over the country, all over the world. Everybody has Free Huey buttons, and it's painted all over the place. And everybody's trying to free Huey. But he's actually in jail for a lot of the time where the Panthers are rising.
The image that was mobilized to create the Free Huey movement gave Huey almost mythic status in the party. He had become an image and not a man, and that gave him power that ultimately proved dangerous.
Surprisingly, in Oakland, there was no violence that resulted in the Panthers policing the police. But what did happen is the state legislatures went ballistic and went to pass a law that you could no longer carry weapons in the open in California, which led to one of the seminal incidents in the Panthers' history, where they went to Sacramento, the state capital of California, with their guns loaded, and kind of ended up on the floor of the legislature with the legislature in session. So it was this crazy incident where the news cameras are rolling, and all of a sudden African Americans kind of walk into the state capitol with their guns. That made the Panthers famous not only nationally but internationally. Well, little Bobby Hutton was what they called the first recruit of the Panthers. So he was kind of the first person that kind of came off the street and said, I want to join the Black Panther Party. I think he was 16 or so when he joined the Panthers, and he became kind of a stalwart of the Panthers. When Martin Luther King was assassinated, Eldridge Cleaver and little Bobby Hutton go out to do what Eldridge called retaliate against the police, and who knows what exactly they did, but they get into this confrontation with the police, and they break into the basement of a house as they're trying to escape from the police. The police shoot tear gas into the basement, and something explodes and catches on fire, so they decide that they have to give up. And Eldridge, who had spent a lot of time in prison and was very sophisticated in the ways of the world and the ways of the police, says to Bobby, take off all your clothes and give up nude, completely nude. And Eldridge takes off all his clothes and comes out with his hands up. He has nothing on at all. And Bobby Hutton, is 17. He's nervous about taking off his pants, and he comes out with his shirt off, but his pants on, and he's gunned down by the police as he's giving up.
Shot down like a common animal, he died a warrior for black liberation. In the name of brotherhood and survival, remember Bobby.
That could have been my son lying there. And I'm going to do as much as I can. I'm going to start right now to inform white people of what they don't know.
And this was a defining moment for the Panthers, because it was the first Panther that was killed like that, publicly by the police. It sets off a lot of sympathy for the Panthers, but I think it also sets the Panthers on this road where, it's kind of this warfare.
We want nonviolence, just like Martin Luther King. But nonviolence on the part of who? To sit and watch ourselves to be slaughtered like our brother? We must defend ourselves, as Malcolm X said, by any means necessary.
As time went on, they come under the attention of J. Edgar Hoover, the head of the FBI, who, J. Edgar Hoover had a special place in his heart for African Americans, a dark, dark place in his heart, and he just, sets out to destroy the Panther Party. The FBI had a number of different tactics that they used to try to destroy the Panthers. One was infiltrators within the party. Another thing they would do was have infiltrators buy the Panthers guns, and then they would tell the local police, well, the Panthers have guns, and they would attack the Panthers. They tried to set spouse against spouse. They tried to set Huey Newton against Eldridge Cleaver, who was another Panther leader. All these things are documented in the film. But in the case of New York, the government had a different method, and what they did was they arrested what was called the New York 21. So they arrested the 21 top leaders of the Panthers and put them in prison and started a trial that became the longest trial in New York State history.
A New York grand jury has indicted 21 alleged Black Panthers on charges of plotting several bombings in the city tomorrow.
On April 2nd, 1969, in pre-dawn raids, 21 Black Panthers were charged with all kinds of terrorist activity.
These are some of the men the police are accusing of being involved in the plot which could have wounded or killed scores of busy New Yorkers. 12 men were arrested today, 2 are already in jail, and 7 more are still at large.
This was a tactic used by J. Edgar Hoover and his program called COINTELPRO, which stood for Counterintelligence Program. This was a tactic that was used over and over again, which put people in jail. If you got convicted, it was a positive because they got you out of the way. If you didn't get convicted, it didn't matter because now you were tied up. So the Panthers were tied up for 2 years They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to get themselves freed for lawyers and a bail and other things. They spent all their time trying to raise money to do this. It was a destructive tactic. It was win-win either way for the FBI. Fred Hampton was the Panther leader in Chicago. He was head of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panthers, and he got that title when he was 20 years old, so he was really young.
And these people in this class have divided themselves. They say, I'm black, and I hate white people. I'm white, and I hate black people. I'm Latin American, and I hate hillbillies. I'm hillbilly, and I hate Indians. So we fighting amongst each other.
Fred Hampton here in Chicago was the main voice for racial unity.
Black Panther Party stood up and said that we don't care what anybody says. We don't think you fight fire with fire best. We think you fight fire with water best. We're going to fight racism, not with racism, but we're going to fight with solidarity.
And one of the things that he did in Chicago with the Panthers was form coalitions with other groups, and understood that coalitions were necessary for any change.
There's police brutality up here. There's rats and roaches. There's poverty up here. That's the first thing that we can unite on. That's the common thing we have, man.
One of the Black Panthers' greatest skill was the use of the media. And to their credit, one of the first things they did was start a paper. And it started out as kind of a one-sheet, mimeograph thing that they typed up, but it became very, very, very sophisticated. And part of the way the Panthers survived was by selling the Panther paper on street corners, in every major city. And they had a great artist, Emory Douglas, that became, kind of a world-renowned artist who every week would have different paintings and drawings in the paper.
Black is you, black is me, black is us, black is free, black is me, black is me, black is us, black is free, black is us, black is me.
I have so many different inspirations for making this film. I mean, one, I was 15 when the Panthers came into being. I was in New York City. I was born and raised in New York. The Panthers were talking about things that were concerned to me and us in New York, housing, police brutality, other things. So I've always had this fascination with the Panthers. I think that, as time went on, I felt that their story had not been told. There hadn't been an accurate film about the Panthers. I thought that what they were calling for in the 10-point program was still so relevant, better housing, better schools, employment, all those things, and police brutality, and end to police brutality. Those things are just that much more in the front of our minds in the States, especially police brutality, where we're living in a time where that is one of the central issues once again in the African American community. We want it to be a film that informs people today about what's going on today. We don't want the film to live in this kind of historical bubble and people walk out and say, "Oh, that was nice back then," but no, the film is about today.